Hello and welcome to this video on the hidden dangers of Wysteria, the attractive flowering bonsai that hides a surprising danger, a poison. Wysteria plants, primarily Wysteria sinensis and Wysteria floribunda, there are also some related species but we'll focus on these for now, are toxic to humans and animals. Well, most of the plant is toxic to animals, but it's especially true of the seed and seed pods because they contain, unsurprisingly, poisonous compounds. The most common route of exposure is going to be accidental ingestion, by somebody, mostly children, looking at it and going, "Ooh, that looks tasty," and biting into it. And this unfortunately leads to the seeds being mistaken for something edible, and the child becoming sick. Fortunately, currently, poisoning is rarely fatal, but it can cause significant gastrointestinal distress, dehydration, and occasionally neurological symptoms. We assume that this is part of why America suffers, but it can't be true because America is not exactly covered in Wysteria. The toxicity itself stems from two main classes of compounds. One is an uncharacterized glycoside known as wysterine, often described as a saponin-like substance, and lectins, carbohydrate-binding proteins. The toxic compounds and their properties are particularly important in this case. Wysterine, which is the uncharacteristic glycoside, is the primary glycoside responsible for much of the irritant effect. Sources variously described it as a saponin-like compound, a steroid or a tryptophan glycoside, and saponins act like natural detergents. They effectively look at your lipid-based cell membrane and disrupt that membrane. It causes foam in aqueous environments, like most of your body. This in turn also causes irritation for mucous membranes. Altogether, it leads to direct damage to both the gastrointestinal lining because your intestine is made up of cell membranes as it's made up of cells, increased permeability because now you effectively have holes inside of your intestines, and fluid electrolyte loss because you have movement of fluid where it shouldn't be. No exact chemical structure is widely published for the toxic form of Wysteria, unlike the purified research lectins, but it does appear to be heat labile or inactivated in some processed forms, which does explain why the raw seed or pods are most dangerous versus those that have been at least semi-processed. Lectins are the other. These are proteins, which include types related to the well-studied Wysteria floribunda, agglutinin, or WFA as used in laboratory histology. It binds specifically to sugar residue on cell surfaces, and your cells have ample sugars on their surface, a lot of the time used as indicators of what the cell is, and in the GI tract, even more so. Because in the GI tract they're able to resist digestion, agglutinate clumps red blood cells or epithelial cells and then interferes with nutrient absorption and triggers inflammation. This can cause a burning sensation, nausea, and eventually vomiting. Lectins from, say, legumes of the Fabaceae family to which Wysteria belongs are a classic example of these anti-nutritional toxins. The raw consumption amplifies effects because cooking would normally break them down or denature them. This is true of, say, fava beans, for example, which can then lead to toxicity if they're not cooked. Hema-agglutinating and mitogenic or cell proliferation stimulating properties have also been documented in Wysteria lectins. These two toxins work synergistically, which is actually quite surprising. It's unusual to see two poisons work so well together, but they do. The lectins damage and inflame the intestinal mucosa, while the glycoside and saponin exacerbates irritation and causes increased fluid secretion. This then leads to systemic absorption issues, which can occur particularly in larger doses, contributing to your body having electrolyte imbalance, dehydration, and then secondary effects, like leukocytosis and elevated white blood cells from inflammation. In extreme cases, massive ingestion could theoretically lead to hypovolemic shock, that's the fluid loss, particularly a volume of blood fluid loss, although this is very uncommon and is basically not really reported in the human exposure, at least not in any time in the last 50 years that we know of. No specific studies we've found could detail exact pharmacokinetics, such as absorption and metabolism, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. But in humans, we only really have vague clinical information to work on. Ethical issues. The ethics committee gets all up in arms about the idea of, hey, we'd like to get some students, and we're going to pay them a little bit of money, and we're going to poison them to see what happens. For some reason, they just don't see the benefit in this science. It's strange. You would think they'd understand that we're just doing this to help people, by making other people very sick for a short time. Oh well. The ethical constraints aside, There are clinical patterns that align with other legume lectin saponin poisonings, such as raw kidney beans. The toxins primarily target the gastrointestinal tract, mostly because that is the first site of impact and therefore the largest dose. But there are central nervous system symptoms, such as dizziness and confusion, which appear secondary to dehydration and occasionally due to vagal response rather than direct neurotoxicity. This is why the clinical effects and onset, at least symptoms, let's call it that, typically begin within 30 minutes to 4 hours after ingestion. Now, it's obviously going to be faster with high doses in this case, or whole seeds in other instances, simply because more damage more soon. And the symptoms should resolve within 24 to 48 hours in most cases, though fatigue, dizziness, and so on can linger for 5 to 7 days. You have, after all, just done a massive amount of damage to someone's GI tract. It makes sense that they would take a bit of time to heal. Common effects include things like burning sensation in the mouth, intense abdominal pain, nausea, and repeated vomiting. Sometimes it can be bloody or bilious, obviously red for blood and somewhat greenish for bilious. Diarrhea, which is often mild, occasionally it occurs, but it's often absent instead, because it's too far from that end of the GI tract to be an immediate factor. Larger doses would also be associated with diarrhea in that case. Sweating, headaches, dizziness, confusion, lethargy, or fainting. A fancy word for fainting. Laboratory findings will show that there's leukocytosis, possibly hemoconcentration, hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, or metabolic alkalosis from fluid electrolyte loss. It's important to point out that it really is just children that are higher risk here, because, to be blunt, even a half-eaten or half a raw seed can trigger symptoms requiring hospitalization. Just smaller people get a bigger dose relative to their size. Adults are far more, egregious in what they need to do in terms of screwing up. They need to eat 5 to 10 seeds, and that's going to give them moderate effects. Obviously, again, more worse effects. No routine deaths have been documented in humans, and that's because of their supportive care. This is essential to prevent dehydration mostly. Evidence from case studies and reports have multiple documented cases confirming the pattern and dose dependence. The case studies we've been able to find, at least one of them, goes back to about 1993, where a 50-year-old woman ingested 10 seeds, mistaking them for beans, which, she developed a headache, gastroenteritis or inflammation of the GI tract, hematemesis or vomiting blood, then dizziness, confusion, diaphoresis, which is just a fancy word for sweating, and syncopal episodes. These symptoms persisted with tiredness and dizziness for up to 5, maybe 7 days were not quite clear. The author reviewing literature identified only one prior report, that's 2 Italian years who each ate some seeds with similar effects. This led to the description of a characteristic Wysteria syndrome, involving what is effectively rapid onset gastroenteritis, plus some central effects. Another case study had an observational study of 7 young children in a kindergarten field trip in Korea who ingested Wysteria floribunda seeds. 6 ate half a seed and 1 ate a whole seed. All began vomiting within 2 to 4 hours. The earlier instance was with the higher dose, again rather obviously, and developed into abdominal pain by 5 hours. 1 became lethargic. All showed leukocytosis. Their symptoms resolved in 2 days with an average hospital stay of about 3.1 days. The conclusion being that even half a raw seed causes significant gastrointestinal and neurological symptoms in young children, with, again, dose correlating to severity as is standard. This is one of the largest pediatric clusters that were reported on. Additional cases have referenced twins who had to call poison control after eating the seeds, pods, and flowers in a contest. 13-year-old kids are dumb, and 13-year-old boys seem to be more dumb than usual. They had the same raft of effects, vomiting, sweating, vomiting with diarrhea for a continuing day after that, and then a full recovery with IV fluids and anti-nausea medication. Uruguayan children had a similar thing where they ate an unknown number of seeds and didn't have any symptoms for about 20 hours. Then they suddenly had abdominal pain and vomiting. They recovered with hydration therapy. And in Italy, there was another older report from the 70s from memory, noting 2 seeds were enough for severe child intoxication, which just makes clear that don't let children anywhere near Wysteria bonsai. These cases show peer-reviewed toxicology journals and poison control data with rapid, consistent onset of effects, but dose-dependent onset. But all of them seem to have fairly good prognosis with supportive care. So, again, without large-scale experimental studies, we don't really have much in the way of what's going on exactly, and we certainly can't isolate the toxins and test it, because again, the ethics committee gets all up in arms about the idea of, why can't you do something else? Why can't you work with animals? Well, the first response to that is, humans are technically animals, but then they get even more huffy when you tell them that, so we've stopped trying. This brings us to the simple conclusion. Wysteria are poisonous. But the question is why? The Fabaceae or legume species that Wysteria is part of produce these secondary metabolites as a chemical defense mechanism. Lectins and saponin glycosides just deter herbivores, insects, and seed predators by causing, effectively, digestive distress. It's the same way that, say, chilies are spicy. The idea is make this thing taste really bad, or you respond really bad to it, and suddenly you're like, oh, I don't want to eat that plant again. Obviously, it applies to animals that don't have the ability to speak, but humans as well, but we don't learn from our mistakes. Just see most of human history. Because they have reduced palatability and potentially impair nutrient uptake, the idea is animals won't consume them, thereby protecting the plant's reproductive investment, the seeds, and therefore vegetative tissues such as leaves, branches, etc., which enhances the existing plant's survival and propagation in natural ecosystems. The fact that the flowers and pods are colourful, but armed with toxins, prevents overconsumption, but it also ensures that, say, bees and similar, in terms of pollinators, come along, pick up pollen, and transfer it as needed. This is not exactly a unique strategy. It's actually quite widespread in the plant kingdom, but it's more common in this particular format amongst other legumes. So there's no Wysteria-specific evolution genomic studies that we could find, but the presence of lectin-like genes and saponins aligns with the family-wide adaptations against predation. Treatment and prevention is, as said, fairly straightforward. Prevention is don't let people eat them. It's simple. No matter how shiny that leaf looks, how pretty that flower is, or how much you think the seed is a bean, don't eat it. Treatment is a little more challenging because there is no specific antidote. There's simply nothing there. The only thing you can do is management in terms of supportive care. Activated charcoal if you catch it early to try and minimize absorption, antiemetics to reduce vomiting, and IV fluids and electrolytes to try and keep up both blood volume and those electrolyte balances to avoid that hypokalemia issue. And of course, monitoring for dehydration and shock, as they will lose more blood volume. The symptoms will normally resolve within 24 to 48 hours, so if you can get through the first couple of days, it tends to resolve quite well. And of course, most of the time it's going to be children who consume these, so being particularly mindful of them is important. In summary, Wysteria's toxicity comes from lectin-induced GI tract disruption and a glycoside saponin membrane irritation to your GI tract. This produces a predictable, consistent, but very self-limited syndrome supported by multiple case reports and toxicological profiles. This is why the Wysteria, while very beautiful, is a plant with a hidden danger. You need to respect it, and especially don't try and nibble on it. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And please do post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.